Call substitute order meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, Tuesday, May 26, 2020. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on local cable channels and on the internet. Meeting is also accessible by remote participation. Use the GoToMeeting, and the access code is for GoToMeeting is 765-986-013. So again, go the global GoToMeeting.com, join, access code 765-986-013. Just so that everyone knows, I'd like to thank Adam, James Cameron Stone, and Angus Spielberg Jennings for putting together a really, really great little vignette for some recognition of what happened on Memorial Day. Angus took some great pictures. Adam did some great editing. So thank you all to that, and people might enjoy taking a look at that. It's available on the website, on Facebook. So that's, we were able to recognize something that's usually a big day in West Newbury. Some other good news here. The Housing Authority has been awarded a grant. I don't have the dollar figure in front of me. Angus, could you elaborate a little more on that?
It's I have not received the official award letter, so we don't know the dollar amount of the grant award yet. We're expecting that anytime. The Housing Authority Executive Director just received a phone call late last week letting them know that they would receive the grant, but she hadn't received the actual letter. But the voters this past fall at town meeting authorized, I believe it's $387,000 for improvements to the kitchens and bathrooms at the Hills Court and Boynton Court developments. And based on this Hill App program, the state match tends to be about $2.50 of state funds for every dollar of local funds. So again, I don't have the paperwork, but it looks like the award would be quite substantial, well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But once we have the official letter, I'll send that around.
So this is a really great thing. The kitchens and bathrooms will be upgraded substantially with this, and this is a really substantial grant. So thanks to all for applying for that and coming through with it. That's great. Anyone that should, especially related to the 40, what's going on with 40B, lots of things, what's going on with movement of town meeting and town elections and so forth. People should subscribe to the town announcements. Go to westnewbury.org and /subscribe. So moving on. First item of business is a request from Police Chief Duran to appoint Sergeant Jay Johnson who is now an interim sergeant, as a full-time sergeant. Is Jeff there? I can't see.
Yep, I'm here, Chief.
Hi, Jeff.
How are you? Jay's been acting sergeant since July of last year. He's done a great job for the department and the town, and I would like to have him appointed as a permanent sergeant.
Any Glenn or Rick, any comments on that?
No. All I have heard is great things. So I would actually, I'd be in favor of Chief Durant's wishes.
My only question is, Mike, does this affect the union contract? Do we have a place for 3 sergeants or no?
The union contract doesn't list any particular number of officers. or lack thereof. So it's up, the appointment power is vested firmly with the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
I mean, I have no other question really. You know, I think we've talked about this a little bit before. I would move that we appoint Jay Johnson as a full sergeant.
Second, Kemper.
Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Parker, aye.
Kemper, aye.
All right, well, with proper social distancing, I guess Chief and the Sergeant can make an appointment with me to be sworn into the new position.
Thank you very much. I'll do that tomorrow.
Next item is the recommendation of appointment of a temporary town constable. Is this for the, especially for the election, Mike?
Yes, this year we have two people applying for constable positions because we have to fill the term of the departed Glenn Coffin. And so therefore, we need to appoint a temporary constable for this June 3rd election. I have a recommendation for the board to appoint Daniel Grabowski, resident over at, that bad side of town over in Crane Neck.
Have you informed him of that, or are you just doing
Yes,
that on your own?
I spoke with
I was
Dan.
wondering if you had his consent or not.
I spoke with Dan, and he was very gracious to lend his assistance to the town.
So moved.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Next item, updates regarding the pandemic and recent legislation updates that have just been taking place from the governor's office. So let's see, where do we want to start on this? Angus, do you want to just comment on the correspondence from the small town administration and finance people?
Sure. We've received some guidance on the CARES Act and the reimbursement procedures for that, including the estimated or potential allocation to West Newbury of that funding. We have until June 5th, which is next Friday, to file a statement with the Commonwealth of anticipated or potential expenses that fall within the eligible categories. So we'll be working on that. We've had procedures in place going back to mid-March for accounting for COVID-related expenditures. So we'll need to put that together and get a report to the Commonwealth by the end of next week. So that's going to be a certification that the costs are COVID related, and that includes eligible costs through December 30th of this year. So it's not that we need to provide a complete list of expenses, obviously, because we continue to incur them and will continue to incur them, but we need to get our foot in the door to preserve our eligibility to seek this funding.
Do you think that the West Newbury's projected amount, that it seemed like quite a bit to me. That doesn't seem like we're going to have any problem with that.
No, I don't think we'll have actual expenses at this point. It's hard to see that it would hit six figures, never mind over 400,000, which is what is in that document as West Newbury's potential allocation.
With the additional work that the Council on Aging has been doing, are there things that going forward we could, people that maybe could help Teresa out? Have those been considered?
I think that's something we need to look at more closely, because up until this point, what's happened is two things have happened. For one thing, we've gotten a number of extremely generous contributions to the food pantry. That's been an area that the town's really stepped up its level of service, and thankfully that's been at this point entirely offset by private donations. Those expenses, as I read this paperwork, would be eligible expenses. So if those were subsequently reimbursed, that portion of the reimbursement would go back into the source that it came from, in this case, the food pantry gift account. But to your point, we have had some of the employees who have been working remotely have essentially been deputized to support the Council on Aging outreach to senior citizens, making phone calls, keeping, maintaining contact with people to ensure that they know that they have support. And that's worked very well. But one thing that has fallen pretty heavily, not in a financial cost, but just a kind of a workload issue, is a lot of the meals delivery that up until prior to COVID, Teresa's office had relied heavily on volunteers to do. Many of those volunteers are in a higher risk category, so have not been making those deliveries. And what that means is our Council on Aging director herself is doing those 26 meal deliveries per day and related grocery shopping. So that's an example of something where I'd really like to get some more backup for her, because she's trying to do that on top of maintaining all of her other responsibilities. So again, so far it's not been a financial impact as much as a personnel, just workload issue.
If there's, just throwing this out, if the people that were the high school kids that were going to be working with the Parks and Rec, maybe we could utilize them in some fashion. Just throwing that out there. Maybe that complicates things, but just
no. I discussed that exact scenario with Park and Rec Chair Jack Foley last week, and actually we were talking about it with regard to the two coordinators, not necessarily the counselors. But I think, that's exactly the kind of thinking we're trying to do. Because
let's see. There's a lot to look at here.
I could say of all of this COVID, and you'd be forgiven for being a bit daunted by the quantity and complexity of the guidance we receive. I think that's something that towns across the Commonwealth are. We're getting so much guidance, and it takes a lot of time to digest all of that. And just within what you have, which is pretty lengthy, there's how many, probably 30 or 35 hyperlinks to even more information. So trying to comprehend all of that, make sense of it, has been has been a challenge. A couple of the things that my office has been most focused on, which are separately agended items later, is the issue of putting in place a transition plan, a phased transition plan to get back toward, some sense of normalcy. We don't have an exact time frame for that, but how would that be phased in terms of initially employees returning to work, how would you stagger schedules, what's going to be the policy on public access. That's been a major focus, both for the town offices and the library. And then also this item of the advisability to prepare a 1/12 budget in the event that, for whatever reason, town meeting doesn't convene and approve a budget by June 30th. And it's been recommended that towns prepare a 1/12 budget, even if you do think your budget is going to be timely approved. So that's an area that those two areas really, we could frankly clear our desk of every other work item that you're aware of and do nothing but those two things, and hopefully we get those two things done. So there's a lot to do.
Is there, overall, Angus, just I think this would be useful to know, just sort of for the anyone listening in too, like, so how would you rate overall how the town has been just functioning with a lot of people working remotely? I mean, are there things that are just not getting done, or are things somewhat normal? Just sort of overall in terms of like building permits or you name it.
I think we've done a really, as an organization, I think we've done a really excellent job at maintaining a basic level of service. So all of the routine inquiries that come into the finance office or the assessing office or the clerk's office, all of the building permit applications, inspections, all of those kind of basic level of service items, in my observation anyway, I think we've continued to maintain the level of service people expect. Even the people working remotely we've set up a number of people with virtual workstations, so they've got full access to the network drive. A lot of the accounting software and payroll software is cloud-based. So we've got employees working remotely who essentially have full access to their workstation. We also have people coming in, even the people working remotely for the most part are coming in once or twice a week for partial shifts just to check the mail, make sure the bills get through for processing. So I think at a basic level, I think we've done well. In terms of work that's not getting done, obviously the policy agenda, some of the things that, the board had been looking at early this calendar year. Some of those things have kind of, fallen by the wayside a bit, in part due to the challenge of physically convening groups and the challenge sometimes of having really substantial, intergroup meetings in this remote format. We've also found, and I know Mike would relate closely to this, we found that some things that in a normal, say, a town meeting cycle that we would do once, at least in my observation, we're having to do 2 or 3 times or more because the rules change or scenarios change, assumptions change. And so planning the logistics of a town meeting, for instance, which in the best of circumstances is some amount of work, this year is just several multiples of that because it's unprecedented. And we're not only trying to maintain good communications among the town employees, department heads, public officials like the moderator, and maintaining all that communication obviously takes time, but we're all also trying to respond to the best practices we're learning about from our various resources. So that sharing of information, whether it's Mike with his town clerk listserv, me with my town manager listserv, Casey with her moderator listserv, Paul Sivigny with his health listserv, we're all getting barraged with information. And so we share that. And then, but the time to kind of really digest that information and synthesize it into something that makes sense locally is a terrific amount of work. So, so there's definitely some things in my own work plan that I would have hoped, would have gotten done this spring that just didn't, and that's fine because the world has changed. So, but I do think, and I mean, maybe, people can let me know if they see it otherwise. But I think in terms of basic services, from where I sit, I think the town's done a really nice job. One other factor that's important to note is that some of the workload in the normal cycle is driven, at least in part, by the permitting, public hearings, legal notices, those kinds of things. So I think the governor's act or order to toll the permitting timelines has definitely taken some pressure off that in a normal cycle, the planning board, Board of Health, Conservation Commission would be very, very busy this time of year leading up to the construction season. It has been a bit of a reprieve to not have to go forward with those public hearings.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good. I want to thank everybody for working under really difficult conditions. Mike, anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. It's a little bit difficult, and we are going forward with the June 3rd town election. I've gotten hundreds of early voting ballots, and I encourage people, if they feel any concern about going for, going into a town election, to submit an early voting ballot application. Since I have to send it up by mail, you should really get it in this week. Obviously, that application is available on the town website under the town clerk's page. And so that's June 3rd. It's going forward. And I'd also point out that I've been working with Paul Savigny, and I want to ensure anyone who wishes to come to vote on June 3rd, we will be open for our normal hours from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. We will be able to have social distancing because we're using the town annex. It is a large enough site to accommodate. We will be having all protective gear available. We are asking everyone who comes to vote to please wear a mask. But we're, everyone who I voted 200 pens, so the pens will be one use, and then you just put it in a box, and so that you're the only person doing that. All the election workers, since most of my election workers are a little up there in age, they naturally have concern that about being out in the public and meeting the public. So I've recruited some college students who are home for the duration, and they've been, and I'm working with them so that we'll have a full staff available. And again, Paul is providing us with face shields, masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, the whole 9 yards. So we'll have one entrance in and one entrance out. So everyone should be assured that we are doing our best to have good social distancing and protective practices so that you can feel secure that you can come down to the annex and vote on June 3rd.
Mike, what would you say if someone is returning their ballot to you by mail? What's the drop dead day that it should be in the mail?
I have to receive the ballot back to by June 3rd by 8 o'clock. They can be dropped off in the before that at the tax payment box. If on the day of the election, normally I would have you go to the town clerk's office to do the ballot, but this time would be different. If you're returning an early ballot, you could be a household member. You could get a ballot, that you're returning for another household member. You would return it to the election site this time. But so you have to apply for your absentee ballot or early voting ballot. They're both the same. By Tuesday at noon. The problem is that I have to mail you the ballot. So if you apply on Tuesday at noon, you won't get it in time to get it back to me. So really, anyone who wants to vote early should really get their application to me by this Friday. And I will tell you is that you can do an application, and you can also you could drop it off in the tax payment box. You can mail it, or if you sign it and you fill that out and you scan it, you can email it to me at the town clerk's office, and that will be good enough too. I will still have to mail you the ballot, and then you have to get the physical ballot back to me. But you could download the early ballot, early voting application from the town clerk's website and do it, scan it, and send it back to me. And that would obviously be the quickest way to get me it. I encourage everyone to get me their early voting applications in as soon as possible, certainly by Friday by the latest.
Archie, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Anything else on that item? I think we're good on that.
The only thing that I would add is that Mike made reference to the tax collection box. You could leave it in there. That's in the lobby of the 1910 building on the right hand. I think it's on the right hand side. Some people might not understand that when he said that, but there's a box there.
Okay.
You can leave your payment and so forth.
Next item, what updates on decision on how we're going to organize the Saturday, June 27th town meeting. So I guess the proposed site has been out on the fields behind the bandstand. Do we know? Let's talk a little bit about actually some specifics. Are we going to have spread out chairs for everybody? Just chairs for a few people? What would be the plan in terms of that?
It's well, we've got.
Why can't everybody bring their own chair?
We discussed this a little bit the last time, and we didn't really come to a conclusion. The problem with the seating and everything else related to that is that you can designate space between where chairs are going to be or where people can put blankets or whatever. But when everybody gets up to leave, then they're all going to be funneling through a similar space. So you have to design the setup in such a way that you can manage crowd control, similar to what they do at a wedding when they, instead of having everybody trying to leave the church at once, they go row by row and have people exit the church that way, so that you don't create bottlenecks at the entrance to the parking area or whatever, where people will be too close together. The other problem is that it's been suggested, and it probably is a good idea, that you use some sort of chalk or tape or marking stuff to actually delineate the space around where any one person or family, if you're a family, you can sit together, but where any one person or family would sit needs to be 6 feet away from where another person or family would sit. So if you just have people coming in with their own blankets and chairs, you have to somehow put down some chalk or something to show that these are available spaces so that people don't just sit too close to each other. Whereas if you put up chairs, you can do it in such a way that they are the appropriate distance apart, and you can put up some chairs in pairs of twos or whatever. There are pros and cons to both approaches. One of the problems with using folding chairs is that they might sink into the dirt and be somewhat unstable. And so, I mean, I don't know about the fields out there. Right now, my lawn is like concrete because we haven't had any rain, but you know, if it gets softer, those folding chairs with the little feet on them can be a little bit unstable. So, it's a decision that has to be made. I don't really have a particular recommendation. My initial thought was that just having people bring blankets and maybe those little chairs like you sit at the beach that don't have the long feet on them, but just have the, like the little sand chairs, would make it easier. But then when you think about people selecting a spot to sit in, you have another problem. So I think we have to somehow use chalk or whatever to delineate areas so that people don't all try to sit in the same spot.
I was a little confused by the, there was a aerial photo with a sketch on it that we got in this meeting's packet. And so the space being used is split between the hard surface on the parking lot and surface in the ball field, and some fence sections are going to be pulled out to allow passage between the two. Is that right? Or did I misinterpret
Just to
that?
be clear, that's an idea. What I did is I included in the packet kind of an update on where we are. None of this is decided. None of this is set. I just wanted the board to be aware that we're working on it. So that was
Oh, okay.
a concept. That's not agreed. That's something we're looking at.
Okay. Well, I guess just.
Casey, what Rick is referring to, Casey, is the information Wayne had sent out last Friday, May 15th.
Okay, so I misunderstood.
If I did, I'm sorry, but I don't remember seeing it, so I don't know what you're talking about. I don't think I saw it.
Rick, one of the,
I would like to think we have enough space without pulling up fences.
The issue with the fences, Glenn, is that there's a pinch point. If people are walking onto the fields, they walk through a very narrow area. So the idea was, are we pressing like an hourglass? Are we sending everyone through a pinch point and therefore encouraging people to be close together? So the suggestion was to temporarily remove a couple of lengths of fence. But again, none of this is set. This is just brainstorming.
and Rick, the reason why some of the parking lot was designated is that we wanted to have some hard surface area for persons who might be mobility challenged, so that they, would have an easier way of accessing the town meeting.
Yeah, I was wondering if that might be the case, and if it was done that way, then maybe that leaves an option for some of the town's chairs to be out in the lot, and people who brought their own chairs could be out in the field. Just
Yes,
possible.
yes.
Casey, I wanted to know if you'd seen how any other towns that might have done something already, how were they checking people in to know that they are registered voters? How are they doing that?
I haven't seen too much about that, but the small number that I have seen are doing some variation on what we always do, that, that there's a table, and we had this new system, I think at the last town meeting or voting, where it was an automatic check-in system that was much more efficient than just the paper thing. You know what I'm talking about, Michael?
Yeah, with the poll pads, we'll use the poll pads again. And what we'll do is we'll set up 2 tables. And the advantage of the poll pads is that they're not divided by street. Anyone can, you can go to either one. We'll probably set up tables, a double table for the registrar, so they'll be, that far apart, and have 2 very separate from each other, and then people hopefully maintaining their distance,
Yeah.
as they check in.
What they
And,
did was they made a line from the parking area to the registration area with 6 feet distances delineated, so that as people were standing in line to check in, they were supposed to maintain the 6-foot distance between each other. And then you go up to the desk one at a time with your mask. You maintain your distance from the registrar, and then these poll pads make things a lot easier to do because they're quicker and that you don't have to go to the right line and all that kind of stuff. Then after the person leaves the registrar's desk, you lay it out in such a way that they would immediately go to the appropriate seating area. Now, we already talked about if people refuse to wear masks for whatever reason, and they can, but I can also, or we can also say, well, fine, if you don't want to wear a mask, you have to sit in this area. So there's a designated area for people who will not wear masks. And then then the rest of the area is open to anyone. And if you're with a family member or family members, you may sit together within a 6-foot
Yeah.
distance from the next
Yeah,
people. But if
that
you're in
designated-
people, you sit by yourself. The only thing that we, and I'll call Wayne and see if I can get a copy of these ideas, because I haven't seen it, so I can't really discuss it.
It's in your inbox, Casey, from May 15th. It's in your
My
email.
inbox?
Yep.
Okay, what? All right.
My suggestion would be, it would be first come, first serve. As soon as they get checked in, we should have people that designate them. You have to go sit there. So we don't have milling around and we don't have to chalk things off. Oh, you're a family, you sit there, and then we bring then we instruct the next people and the next people and the next people and the next people. And, and then you fill it up so we don't have people, waiting for their friends to sit next to each other and all that. When you show up, you need to go to a spot that's designated by us afterwards. So it's a good flow.
That makes a lot of sense, Glenn, I think. You really
I think
don't
Glenn's point
going
is
around
excellent, yeah.
and people getting, moving around
Casey,
talking to each other.
Where
I
did
don't
you
want
get
to
the?
sit here, it's too sunny,
Yeah, we're sorry.
People-
We're
You know how
sorry.
people are at the beach. They get a spot and then they don't like it. They want to go to a different spot.
No,
So
no,
we don't want
you
that.
come through and you have to be, you're ushered almost right to a spot, and then that person can make the determination if it's a family or not a family, and then the next person can be 6 feet away, or the next group of people can be 6 feet away, husband and wife or family. Casey, you made a statement about if someone doesn't want to wear a mask, they have that right. That's true?
Michael chimed in on that last time, Glenn, because when the governor made his pronouncement that we had to wear masks, he also said if for some reason you can't wear a mask,
Okay,
meaning that you've got a health problem or something, but
okay, I
if
got
there's
it.
some reason why you can't wear a mask, you can have an exception, but you don't have to explain yourself. Just say, I don't.
Yeah,
can't
okay, good. I got it.
So that's when I said, well, all right, if they don't want to wear a mask for whatever reason, and they don't have to tell us, that's fine, but they have to sit in the no mask area.
Yeah, it's called Groveland.
Oh, what?
I said it's called Groveland, the designated area.
Well, I like that.
Okay, we can work on this and we'll get a little more information too, as other towns do it. Maybe we'll learn from what some other people have done also.
Well, the one thing that I-
Casey,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
Mr. Chairman, this is Glenn.
Later, am I talking over someone? No. Are we going to mark the area with chalk or ropes or whatever? Or rather than just letting people sort of come into the area and find a place to put their blanket? And there seemed to be some consensus from the Mass Moderators Association document that I sent to all of you that it was important to go ahead and delineate the area so that you can control where people sit, so that they're not sitting too close together and they're not looking for seats next to friends. Sort of what Glenn was talking about, just go in, find a circle, sit in it, and stay there.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even.
I think you could use the stuff that you used to mark the outfield line, the baselines, that kind of stuff.
There's plenty of chalk. There's plenty of stuff that you can be used, but I wouldn't let them even give them the opportunity to go find a place. We need to have some good coordination of ushers or whatever, or people to point, so it's flowing, because it's going to be very confusing to everybody when we get there. And it's going to be, oh, where should I sit? It just no, you go down there. No, I'm sorry. No, you need to go right there. We're very sorry. That's where you need to sit. I mean, I wouldn't let anybody decide themselves, because you're going to have 300.
We could also number the spots. So, the first people go to spot number 1 and, like that. I mean, it's going to be hard to make sure everybody follows directions but if we have a lot of ushers, that's just more people.
Well, I mean, not ushers in the sense it could be us. It could be people that are already going to be there.
Yeah.
I got it. I think we're beating it up too much. Mr. Chairman, since we're talking about town meeting, is it something we could take out of order? We have update regarding Coffin Street, Main Street. No, not that one. Which one am I talking about?
Yes, that's what we want to talk about, Glenn.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the updates on Coffin Street and potential of the citizens petition and so forth.
Right. So Casey, I'm sure you're aware that there is a petition to have a special town meeting with a specific warrant article about the proposed 40B development. And so it seems that it would be redundant to hold an additional outdoor meeting. We would certainly want to, I would think, have that special town meeting at the same time we have the regular special town meeting and the regular annual town meeting. So we would want your thoughts on how that would be. It's quite possible that could be a very well-attended event. We haven't received the citizens petition, but according to Angus, we know that it is forthcoming. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, my feeling would be that normally we would want to do that last, but in this situation, because of the abnormality of the situation, maybe we want to get the big crowd question over early. So I'll throw that out for your comments.
Well, do you think you really are going to get this petition in a timely fashion enough to get out a warrant for this town meeting?
Well, so if it's submitted, obviously the warrants for this town meetings have already been signed and posted.
Right.
But if submitted with the requisite number of signatures, and we do have, it's been represented to us that many more signatures have been received than are required, the selectmen would be compelled to call a town meeting. So I think what Archie's saying is, if that's going to happen, we think it would, at least the initial thought is, it would make more sense to coordinate the timing of that with the town meeting, rather than potentially the need to have a second separate date, perhaps sometime in July, for this article. So Mike, do you want to summarize the process?
But I question the urgency of that rather than the budget. Most of the activity among towns with their town meetings now has been to try to streamline the town meeting as much as possible. Either if the selectmen had not posted the warrant yet, they posted a minimum number of articles on the warrant so that they could get the budget through, and then plan to have another town meeting sometime in the fall to take care of other business. Other towns are using consent agendas or consent calendars to eliminate a number of the articles from the warrant in one vote, with the promise that they're not being eliminated forever. They'll come up in another town meeting later on, but that the idea is to get this town meeting over with as soon as possible, so that the town can still function, still has a budget, still has whatever other services it needs right away, and anything that could possibly be dealt with sometime later in the summer or in the fall, somehow put it off. And this particular suggestion that you put this thing first really flies in the face of that, because, you know, this is, are they proposing, well, you don't know because you haven't seen it yet, but is there a money amount that's being proposed to hire counsel for this?
Yes, the form of the petition that's been circulating speaks about $250,000 or some other amount. But that's the document that people around the community have been signing.
You'll need 90 people for that.
Right.
If we-
And there is a
up
time,
front,
Casey,
we may
there is
never
a,
get to everything else.
there is a time constraint on this. So in other words, the special town meeting has to be called by the Board of Selectmen within 45 days after receipt of said citizens petition. So we can't really wait till August if we receive it.
No, I mean, to me, right now, is what I understand you're asking me is, if we were to call that, or if you were to call that other special town meeting on the same day as the annual town meeting and the already scheduled special town meeting, so this would be like special town meeting number 2 on
Correct.
the same day, should we do special town meeting number 2 first? And my answer is no. I don't think that that is the most important thing that we have on our plate. I think that the most important thing that we have on our plate is to keep the town running. If we want to go with the 1/12 budget kind of thing, and just postpone, we can still do that, because I can put in yet another delay. They haven't gotten rid of the state of emergency yet. And so, you know, if we can't make decisions about the budget, we still have the option of putting in another delay and going to a 1/12. But from everything that I've read and heard about what other towns are doing, their primary concern is to get the budget of the town in some sort of shape so that the town can continue to function. And that's much more important than, I mean, they're taking all kinds of zoning articles and things like this and just, you know, saying no action, no action, no action, no action, no action, because they're just not that tight. Now, if we wanted to dispense with the other town meeting, or a lot of the articles on the other town meeting and a lot of the articles on the annual town meeting, by either moving no action on all of them, or I guess that's all we can do because the warrants are already posted. We can put together consent agendas to lump things together that are similar and can be passed all at once. Then we might have time to do a third town meeting on the same day. And you know, at this point, so is there, I don't know how to answer this question exactly. The petition is asking to hire outside counsel for assistance in fighting this 40B proposal. Is that correct?
Well, it's to study it and to provide assistance for the town in reviewing it.
Right.
And also
So it's there. So what is the time constraint that would have to be done by for it to do us any good?
No, well, there is nothing imminent right now. But also, Casey, I just wanted to point out to you, as long as the emergency still exists, you do have the option to postpone the special town meetings alone and just go with the annual.
Right. And we would have to talk about all of that because, you know, you the selectmen and you, Mike, and the finance committee and everybody else has a much better perspective on what are the most pressing needs of the town right now. and what things could conceivably just be taken care of later. Not saying that they're not important. Of course, everything's important, but to keep the town up and running until we get through this mess, what are the most important things that we need to deal with in a very timely fashion? And if there are things that don't need to be dealt with in a very timely fashion, is there a way that we can use moving no action or consent agendas or something like that to dispense with a lot of it at once, with the understanding that it can be brought back? It's not, I mean, moving no action at this town meeting doesn't mean you're never going to see it again. The article can be brought back at a later time. But I think that the main focus on deciding what to do about warrants and articles and everything else is, what do you all need to have taken care of on May 27th, assuming or June 27th, assuming we can have that meeting? What are the things that need to be done to keep things rolling until we can deal with some of the other stuff? So we need, I guess we need to have the articles sort of put into categories of top priority, secondary priority, third priority. Now, if there's no particular time thing on hiring this outside counsel, if there's no particular reason why it has to be done right now, we will have to call another town meeting if we postpone some of these things at some point, whether it's indoors or outdoors, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see how the whole thing goes out. And that could be put at that time.
But Casey, a lot of this too is a game time decision. This might, I mean, I know we have to plan for the worst, but this might go smooth.
Right, you're right. Well, the thing is,
It's a game time decision. I mean,
yeah. Right, but if we lose the quorum at some point, because we need a quorum of 90 for the annual, and we're gonna need a quorum for any items on the specials over, what is it, $20,000 now, Mike? 10,000, 20,000? If we lose the quorum, I mean, as long as nobody says anything, I guess we'll be okay, but that's also in play. I mean, we can keep going as long as we can keep going, but the longer we drag it out, the harder it's going to be.
I think we're going to have a quorum. That won't be a problem. And if we keep most of the discussion to a minimal, but make sure, we're transparent as possible, we can move through this pretty quickly. Because we've streamlined the budget also. I mean, I don't think there's going to be any big surprises for anybody.
Well, is it the consensus of the board that you want to do that third town meeting first? That third special or the second special?
Why don't we make it a game time decision? But understanding the parameters and understanding, we have to see, to make decisions like that, we have to see what happens that day.
We can't do that
If
completely.
there's-
The warrants say you've been summoned or whatever it is to a special town meeting at such and such a clock on such and such a day. And the way we typically do it is the annual town meeting has the first time, and then the special town meeting has the second time.
Yep.
We open annual and do the introductions and all that kind of stuff.
And then we recess and we go to the special.
recess the Annual and bring in the special. But on the warrant, you have a time. So I can do so much with moving things around, but if you've put a time on that warrant for when this town meeting's going to be.
Yeah, but I thought that as long as you didn't start it before that time, it's okay. But if we made every effort, I mean, as long as we do it after that time, that would be fine. We just can't start it before whatever that scheduled time is.
Well, so how would this work? You're going to make a warrant with no time on it?
No, I'm not saying that. but the
No,
warrant
just have one is the annual starts at 10 and special town meeting 1 or 2, whatever you want to call it, starts at 10:15.
Well, they all start
Something
at
like
10,
that.
and then you decide they all start at 10 because you're making the town aware of when they're going to start, and then you make the decisions that right then. I would try to stay to the format that we always do, and then just you might have to make some adjustments that day. We don't know. What happens if it's pouring raining out and nobody shows up?
Well, that's something we need to discuss. If we need to have a
I think at least we wanted to make you aware of it, Casey, tonight, and then we can start planning for it. I don't think we're going to come out to any conclusions tonight.
We don't have to decide now. I just wanted you to think about it because in case there's a lot of, this has happened before, we get a lot of one issue voters that all show up. 300 people show up to vote about the 40B issue, and we're making them wait around for in an open space for an hour and a half. That's not going to be a good scene.
Well, how about all the people who showed up that aren't there because of the 40B issue? Who showed up
Well, I know, but
on the annual town meeting, and now the annual town meeting can't start because this thing goes on for 3 hours. I mean, you're not going to win on that one, Archie.
Excellent point. Excellent point.
that's a good point. Okay.
We just want to make you aware of it because it's coming down the pike, and I think if we get the citizens petition in, we don't even have it yet, but most likely we're going to get it, is that we should schedule it for that day too, because it would be ridiculous to pull it all together for 2 weeks later. I mean, so we have to. I mean, because there are certain parameters that we, that are out of our hands. We receive it, we have to have a special town meeting within 45 days. So we have to have it no matter what. Logistically, I think it would be better to have it the same time, but we just need to make sure we organize it and work it out the best we can. We all can only do the best we can. That's it.
Well,
Mike,
I would not suggest that you tell people that particular one article town meeting is going to be the first thing on the agenda.
Mike, would Casey have the ability to allow the regular annual town meeting, do the budget, and in her authority related to allowing for a postponement, and then postpone the other special town meetings? Would we be in violation of the 45-day thing if that happened?
No, the answer is that if the state of emergency still exists in the Commonwealth, then the town moderator has the authority to postpone, with the consultation of the Board of Selectmen and other town officials, those town meetings. And if she felt in her wisdom that it was too much to take on, given the, it's not only the question of but the amount of time necessary for people to be in one setting is a concern, as well as, social distancing, then she could, under the provisions of 3910A, postpone the special town meetings alone for a period of up to 30 days. That's contingent upon, obviously, the state of emergency still being extended.
So, Michael, the legislation that was just passed that specifically gives the moderator the authority to postpone town meetings for up to 30 days and then redo that if necessary at the end of the 30 days. It does not say specifically an annual town meeting. It just says any town.
It says town meetings. It does not, it means all town meetings.
All town
Whether it's
meetings.
a special town meeting or an annual town meeting.
So
So
is there anything on the special town meeting warrant, the one that's already exists, that's time sensitive that we really need to take care of right away?
go ahead, Angus.
I don't have it in front of me, but yeah, I mean, there's things like the National Grid, the amount that's due for the electrical bill. There's the balance of payment due for Essex Ag. So there's a couple of things where the town does have financial obligations that need to be met this fiscal year if possible.
Mhm. Do you have any idea off the top of your head how many of the articles on the annual town meeting that you would feel comfortable with taking no action on, assuming it's going to be taken up later on?
Is that a question to me or to the board?
Anybody? I mean, there are 24 articles on the annual town meeting warrant. Of those 24 articles, how many of them would survive being moved no action and taken up at a later date?
I don't think I can answer that question tonight, but we can get that answer to you at our next meeting, which would be June 8th.
Okay, well.
I don't feel comfortable, or maybe
This town meetings day, whatever we're gonna have, drag out forever, because I think that would be disastrous. I mean, the idea is to,
I would agree with that.
Get people there, do the business you need to do, make sure people feel that they have an opportunity to speak and be heard and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure that with this issue with the 40B, it's a real hot ticket item. People are going to have a lot to say about it. It's not going to be an easy discussion at all. It's very, very fraught with all kinds of stuff. And, you know, the other two town meetings have lots and lots of articles on the warrants. So if we have business, which is really important for us to keep the town running, we need to be cognizant of the fact that this other meeting that we have to have, agreed, I'm not arguing with that, but that meeting could just consume all of the time available to us. And then if all the people who only came for that issue got up and left, we might not even have enough of a quorum to do the regular town meeting.
So since that, we don't even have it yet, it comes in, we talk about it at town meeting in the order that we did things. We go about it and we make that one last.
Let's all independently take a look at the articles and see which things we think we can't live without it, or we can live without it, and just we'll have to go through them at the next meeting. I think we'll do that. Let me ask you this, Casey: is there a way we can do the budget in the interest of times of things? Is there a way we can do the line item budget without doing every line item?
That's a good
There is
question.
a way we can do it, and it is in town meeting time, which is our parliamentary handbook, where instead of reading every line, you just introduce the budget. I'm gonna have to refresh my memory on, because people can still put a hold on certain lines, but I don't remember exactly how they do that if I'm not reading each line. You know, right now I read each line and they holler hold.
Right.
So if I just introduce the budget as a line item budget and we're going to vote on it, then somehow there has to be a way to recognize people for holds. And then,
Couldn't you ask for if there are any holds? I mean, just, it's going
Yes.
to require people to have pre-read the budget, but if,
we talked about this last time, because that would require that people read the entire line item budget before they get to the meeting, or at least before we open that article, which is still Article 3, I think, isn't it? So people would have had to read all of the line items and decide which ones they wanted to discuss. And it wouldn't be done in real time, you know, like I'm reading this and now I think I'd like to discuss that. You'd have to have all your ducks in order before we got to that article so that you'd know that you want to discuss something.
How
Yeah.
about instead of, say the police department has, I don't know, 7 line items. How about, we just read the total for the department rather than each individual line? That would save a lot of time.
But still, if somebody wanted to discuss a line, I mean, we'd have to go back and then figure out which line it was they really wanted to discuss. And
Correct. I understand. Yeah.
so, I mean, but you know, I read this before our last, before your last selectmen's meeting, and it didn't sound all that bad to me about how you do it. I just don't remember exactly how you get the holds put in. But, you know, if you want me to take a minute, I'll go look it up and you can talk about something else. But,
I don't think we need to discuss that tonight, Casey, but I think we just need to start planning stuff. We need to do some homework and look at the articles like you've asked us to look at, and then we can come back at the next meeting and you can come back with that information and we can try to streamline it as best as possible.
right.
Yeah.
And I've been looking at it too, trying to figure out what I would recommend that we try to just either move no action in a block of things that can be done later without hurting anything, or, you know, make a consent agenda for things that are just really routine, never get any discussion kind of stuff. But then Mike made a point, which was a reasonable point, that, you know, since we've never used a consent agenda or a consent calendar in West Newbury, this is just adding another new kind of thing. You know, so we're already moving outside, social distancing, blah, 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 blah. Just what we need is another new approach to stuff. But I still think that we can do that if we have enough articles that can be treated that way. I think we can explain it. I think I can explain it in such a way that it's not going to be a serious problem for people. And what ends up happening is that the way you handle the line item budget with this other is very much like a consent agenda. You're saying the line item budget is a consent agenda, and you can say certain things shouldn't be included in it. And that's how people put their holds in. The only problem is it has to be done up front, because we're not going to read all those lines. So you have to know you want to hold on line whatever before we start.
Okay. Maybe people should be forewarned of that too. Like the voters are going to have to do a little more homework than normal too.
Right. And that's one of the things that the moderators in the other towns have all suggested, and some have already done, to have some sessions, Zoom sessions or GoToMeeting sessions or whatever, where the whole warrant is being discussed. So that if people have questions, you know how normally people just have a lot of questions, they just want some information. And so
Right.
then we have to wait while somebody says, okay, I'll answer that question or whatever, and it's just a time sink. But so if there are questions that can be answered ahead of time, if it's just really informational, you know, I would like to know how much money we spent last year on lawn mowing or something like that. We can encourage people to come to some pre-meeting Zoom type meetings or GoToMeeting type meetings, simply to get their questions asked, so that when we get to the meeting, we can expedite the discussion and keep from having a lot of just people searching for answers to questions and people searching for somebody to answer the question.
We could set something up also, I think maybe like tell people that we'll take questions by email and be able to do something like that ahead of time. So
Right.
like we did
Good idea.
with the 40B, like anybody had any questions, they have to be submitted by May 15th, so then we get, have every avenue, because you're right. People do have questions and it's a simple thing, but if you have 20 of those, that's an hour. And,
That's right.
and a lot of those type of things can be done. So it sounds like we have to do our homework before our next meeting and maybe streamline some of the articles, which I think we have already started doing in our heads, quite honestly. And then have some type of format at our June 8th meeting. Is that our next meeting? And then we go forward with that. And then we start educating the public on the format and that at that point, which gives us 19 days to educate everybody, and we don't change. So you know what I mean? We need to, whatever it's going to be, it needs to be, and then we need to start educating people. So then they're not surprised that day if they've done their homework.
Angus, because of the delay and so forth, the booklet should be out a little bit. There should be more of a lead time for people to peruse the booklet. When is it actually coming out?
Well, there's a couple of work items that are on my desk that I need to get done. So once I get those done, it can go to the printer. One of the questions I've been talking with Forbes about is whether we want to include anything in the booklet regarding the preparations that are being made regarding COVID to give people some expectation that it will be outdoors, what they can expect, hopefully to put people's minds at ease that they can feel safe coming to town meeting. But that becomes a chicken and egg thing, and I don't think we want to delay the booklet before all of those details get worked out. That's just not going to work because there's just too many details.
Well, because we want people to be a little bit more up on the line item budget, for example. I think the earlier we can get it out, so people can actually take a look at it and not ask as many questions at actual town meeting, that's a good thing.
Yeah, without a doubt, we need to get this thing out, and then we can inform the public how this is going to all happen.
So a week or so, or a few days, we have some kind of as Casey suggested, a online meeting that we can get through some of these questions that people might have, and I think that will streamline things a lot at the actual meeting.
Hopefully it will. And, we could do more than one. I mean, not everybody has to be at every meeting, for informational purposes. So, if we had Angus and one of you at one meeting, and then I could do one with Mike and another selectman at another meeting, just to sort of make everybody accessible, and then encourage like you said, the email. You come to the meeting if you have further questions. Here's everybody's email address.
Okay, I think we've beaten this to death. So do we have our marching orders tonight
Yes.
in this?
Okay, so we're all gonna pick our things that
No,
we could either coalesce or do without.
Well, I don't like that idea. I don't think we should. I don't think independently as a board we should do that. There's been a lot of planning, a lot of organizational things with department heads and in commissions with Angus. So I think we three need to have a meeting with Angus to really talk about what we think that needs to go forward, rather than all three of us independently cherry picking. I don't think that's good, and then we go back to the meeting and Angus goes, "Oh my word, that's the most important one." I'm just whatever. I think this needs to be generated from Angus, and he needs to talk to some people and say, "Hey, listen, we might have to at the end." You know what I mean? He needs to be the one coming to us saying, "Hey guys, you know, a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 7. This is a 3. This is a 10 or something like that. I'm not used to saying to use that type of format, but I have no idea because I didn't do I have my own opinions and ideas and I've looked at the budget and all that, but Angus is the one to tell us with the department heads, hey, no, maybe we can get away with it without that article this year. That's it. That's my opinion.
But I think we should all come to a consensus on it, though.
But Glenn, it's
Without a
not
doubt.
necessarily we can live without it this year because we always have another town meeting anyway in the fall. As soon as we can possibly have a regular town meeting, either in late summer or in fall, we can have a special town meeting and take up things that got moved no action or whatever at the annual town meeting. It doesn't mean they're going away to die for the whole year. It just means that for this particular meeting, they're not at the top of the list.
I understand that, but what scares me too, Casey, is the unknown. We still might not be able to do it this summer or fall.
In September or something, yeah.
Yeah, and having everybody in that one place that time and going through all this logistical craziness, and maybe it might be another 45 minutes, but we got it all done rather than saying, okay, the state's going to finally open up. The thing that scares me is that we don't know. There could be another wave that comes through and we get shut down again. I have no clue, but we should try to get as much as we possibly can get done if we're going to go through the effort. And I think people have to understand that. This is a big effort. We should try to get as much as we possibly can get done because, an extra 45 minutes could mean the whole thing's finished rather than even worrying about something else.
Well, I would amplify what Glenn just said and sort of reaching back to what Casey said earlier, which is, I think the most important thing is for us to get the meeting that includes the budget done. And so, you mentioned that earlier, Casey. I certainly agree with that. We need to be able to operate as normally as possible. And if we can't complete the annual town meeting, which includes the budget, then we've kind of defeated ourselves.
Right.
So I think that should take precedence over everything else.
Well, I will get back with you later this week after you've all had a chance to look at things and see if there is any way that we can do any streamlining. I mean, Glenn, I don't want to make people feel like, they got dumped off the warrant unnecessarily, but I do think it's going to be, it's going to take us time to get people settled down and checked in and everything else. And then, we'll have the microphones and stuff, but just getting people to walk up to the microphones and then having them sanitized and then sitting back down again, it's not going to be the normal flow of stuff that we have at town meeting. So at normal town meeting, when we have it in the annex, all the people, the selectmen, the finance committee, Angus and the other town office employees that have information are all sitting at tables with microphones right in front of them. When people ask questions, these other people are readily available to answer the questions. The distance that people have to walk to get to a microphone is minimal. There's no reason why you can't climb over the other people in your row and just think about the way the town meeting normally operates. And yes, we're pretty good in West Newbury. We get it done and we don't spend a lot of time, waste a lot of time. But this particular scenario isn't going to be quite as easy to handle. So we have to factor in, that and try to make it as manageable as possible.
Okay, I think we've talked that enough. Thanks. We'll all put some thought into this.
Hey, Archie.
Yeah.
I think you're aware, we do have the lead sponsor of the petition article on the call. I didn't know if you wanted to hear from him or if you feel that we've adequately discussed that issue.
What would the reason be? Not that I don't want to hear from him, but what would be the reason to
Yes,
I mean, my intent in suggesting this for the agenda was exactly the discussion we
I
just
would-
concluded regarding timing and logistics. That's been my primary intent. I think the language of the petition speaks for itself in terms of the intent largely. I just wanted to make the chair aware that Don is on the line if there was a question. And I think just to
Well, the only question that I would have is he going to file the petition? And if the answer is yes, when would that be? That would help us too. You know what I mean? Obviously we can try to coordinate with him and
that's
work with him on that so we can streamline it or
Len said it best. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Great. If I may, thank you. Thank you, Selectman Kemper, and thank you to the board, Angus, and to Moderator Swallow for going through the logistics. And what we did is, Angus said, want to get this to you all in a way that you can work the logistics as best possible. So my intent was to bring the signatures to be certified tomorrow to the town clerk, but wanted to ask, and there are obviously a number of different things at play here, because it does invoke the 45 days, and there's discussions about, certainly having it on this June 27th warrant. I wanted to get counsel from you all if you'd rather we wait to bring them up, because is there a possibility that the entire June 27th meeting gets delayed for some reason, and now we've got within 45 days of when this petition is submitted? Does that make sense, the question?
Yes, and I think Mike addressed that, but Mike, you explain it again. Yeah.
yeah because
The only reason, if the special town meeting was called for June 27th, but the state of emergency still existed, and it was in the opinion of the town moderator that the town meeting couldn't be held, then it could be extended for an additional 30 days. After that, from the date of the first meeting. So just like the annual town meeting could be done again and the special town meeting. And these can be recurring items, meaning if 30 days from June 27th we're still in a mess or in a worse mess, the town moderator could extend for another 30 days. So until the state of emergency has ceased, then she has that authority to do that.
Okay.
My opinion.
Go ahead.
My opinion would be to get it in as soon as you can, and then we know, this is only my opinion. Then we know what we're dealing with, and then we can start planning. I think that's the most important thing, because understanding that it can't happen, that's because of the state of emergency. But I would say get it in, get the signatures, because it will take a time to get the signatures verified by the town clerk, and then at least now we have some time and we understand what we're dealing with, and then we can plan properly.
Okay, so I will bring that up tomorrow, yes, because there's, right now, last count, there was over 370 signatures.
That will take a while to verify.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get it in tomorrow. I just was, I didn't realize the 30-day extension. I didn't want something to happen where annual town meeting gets suspended, but because this warrant gets signed, it some way binds us. But Mike explained that, so thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Okay, all good. Next item, Angus, you want to I think pretty briefly, just discuss plans for opening the town buildings and the library. We don't have to get too detailed.
Yeah, the work is underway. I don't have timelines. As you can see in the packet we have in the library, they put together a phased plan, but there's no times associated with those phases. And even that plan, while it was reviewed by the library board, is also subject to change as we continue to get further guidance from Department of Public Health. One thing on the town offices, we'll need to put together a formal plan that I need to bring to the board for review, hopefully at the next meeting. We've got staff, myself and a couple of others working on that. It's just a matter, honestly, of finding enough dedicated time. I mean, I don't need to tell you how much time has gone toward this 40B thing in the last few weeks. So it's all competing for the same amount of time. So we're working on it, but we don't have, firm answers at this point.
Does anybody have any information relative to Mill Pond and how that went over the weekend? I meant to ask Jeff when he was on earlier, and excuse me, how all that went with the town. Only citizens using it, and did we have any problems, tickets, anything like that? Anybody hear anything?
Last week seemed to go pretty smoothly. I don't know over the weekend. I didn't get any updates, and which is probably a good sign.
Angus, did you have
As
many
late as Friday
requests for stickers?
Many requests, yeah. And as late as Friday afternoon, we were, myself and Paul and Kate Day were working to get residents their parking permits Friday afternoon, so they would be able to access the property over the weekend. So it definitely was. There were many, many requests. I don't know what the number is. I do see Kate is on the line. I don't know if she wants to speak to this, but she would have more of a front row seat on that than I do.
She muted?
She is not muted unless she herself has muted herself, but she's not muted on our end.
Okay, well, we can find out later. That's okay.
I was just curious. That's just a good indication of how things work. You know what I mean? I was just, whatever. Thank you.
So I think, Angus, that you're being extra cautious in the planning a 112 budget, just in case. So, in case there's a huge thunderstorm or whatever, and we can't have a town meeting on June 27th, we have to be able to have a functioning budget for the month of July, when a lot of important things, probably insurance payments and so forth, pension payments have to be made. So I would say that initially I thought that this would be redundant, but it looks like now that maybe we need to do this.
Yes, and Mike, do you want to speak to the advice that you got?
I just want to address the question of a rain date. Now, we talked. Remember, the town moderator has a second ability to postpone town meeting, basically to go to town meeting, and basically assess that there's no quorum, and then adjourn to a time certain. So one of the things that we could do is we could pre-plan a rain date for the town meeting. That basically kind of make it known to people that if the weather is basically not going to cooperate at all, then what was it? Casey and I and one other town meeting member will show up in the rain and basically adjourn to what we presuppose as a rain date. So that's something you can also think about as a way to get it done in fiscal year 2020. I mean, that was one of the reasons that Casey suggested doing it on the 27th as opposed to on the Monday, which I think was the 29th, because we would have, we could maybe postpone it to the Sunday. We could pre-plan for a rain day if that's what people want.
I would say definitely, and it should be that Sunday because all of the logistical things would have been already set up on Friday and stuff.
Mhm.
And so, without a doubt, we should have a rain date on Sunday.
And
We can,
hopefully we won't have 2 days of rain.
We can look at the weather forecast ahead of time and see if there's large rain scheduled. And sort of get the word out that that's what we're going to be doing. If there's going to be a big rainstorm on Saturday, we'll know that sometime on Friday probably. And we could adjourn until Sunday or Monday. Now Monday's problematic because during the day, some people still have to go to work and stuff like that. So Monday's not the best day to do an outdoor meeting, but
you could do it. You could do it at 5 or 6 or 7. I mean, it's light till 9:30. That's the longest time of the year.
It'll be like Woodstock, 3 days of mud.
let's hope not. That's all we need. Woodstock and West Newbury. But I do think it's wise to at least talk a little bit about the 1/12 budget. The 1/12 it's a minimum of 1/12. It's not up to 1/12. It's a minimum of 1/12 of your fiscal 2020 budget that gets proposed. And you can put a percentage, I think it goes up to 5% additional money into the proposed 1/12 budget. You'll have to check that 5%.
Yeah.
I think I saw that, but I'm not sure about that. But you can't go under 1/12. So, you can propose 1/12 of what you had last year for your budget items.
But
And whatever the additional is that you're allowed to do.
But you have to have
Guys can think
potential,
about it.
like one-time invoices, say like a pension fund that you might be paying, once every 6 months or whatever. Those you have to plan for those. So just dividing the budget by 1/12 doesn't work. I heard from the DLS that they want to see some regular, they want to see what the invoice is going to be rather than just take your budget for last year and divide it by 12. They want it more detailed than that.
Archie,
Because each month is different.
Right.
Archie, people from the DLS explained it to the attorneys as that the 1/12 is a floor, not a ceiling. And that people can make their assessment to regional school districts, to pension funds.
Right.
All that can be made in the ordinary course. So if this is an expense that occurs in the month of July, I guess, provided you have the cash flow, which I don't think will be a problem, is that you can make those larger expenses in the normal course.
Right, but you have to send them in. They have to be approved by DLS beforehand. So we can't just assume it's gonna. Probably they will approve things, but it does have to be. It requires some thought. It isn't divided by 12. That's my only point. Yeah. Angus, what are your thoughts on this? Is this going to be a huge job or what?
It's a significant job. And I think it's, really ought to get done for the June 8th meeting so the board could vote it that night and we could submit it to DLS through the gateway system that week. That would be my goal. But, and that, I'd love to push aside a lot of other things. It's just
can you sort of use last year's July, expenditures as a pretty good template?
Yeah, I think getting the starting point isn't a problem at all. I've got the entire budget in Excel. I could do that, an initial cut at it very quickly and then just make those adjustments based on, qualitative information that we know, whether that's based on the pensions or debt service or those kinds of things. But filing the paperwork with the DLS, they just made that module live. Actually, I don't know that it's live yet. I believe they're testing it. So we don't know until we see what they put out, exactly what format of information we need to provide. It'll take some time, and then, doing the work is one thing, communicating that around or making sure we've got, people are aware of that. That's the other thing. I think it's, it's probably the first among many top priorities. But, I just look at every single day, we're thrown off our game. And part of that's just, we're so short-staffed for what we do. So, we get an unemployment claim that affects my personal time. There's a lot of things that's in the day-to-day operations of the town that cut into time. And so this petition article, for example, that'll come to Mike. Mike doesn't have backup staff. So Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming it's going to be you personally certifying these signatures. So these are the kinds of things it's just hard to overstate how stretched we are. So of course the budget
Can we bring some additional people in and use the COVID relief money for that and have that documented because of unforeseen circumstances, and get some people in here to assist?
Not really, no, because part of the problem is that, physically having people in the building is problematic. So we've been working with getting some backup accounting support, but just getting that person the data that they need and scanning those documents, and because it's all remote. So the physical constraints of actually not having people here in the office, things like sorting mail and posting envelopes and things that normally, aren't affecting our time. All of those things are affecting our time on any given day. So it's just, we have a very lean crew, and we're constantly the budget's the top priority. So I'll find a way to get it done. But just speaking very frankly, as I look at my workload for the next week, it's about 200 hours of work. Obviously, I can't do that amount of work in a week, so I need to make decisions of what's going to get done and what's not going to get done. But I've been doing that every day for the 2 years I've been here, so what's new? It's really only slightly busier than it was my first month on the job, honestly. We've been having to make those trade-offs every single day. But a lot of these things I hear and I think, geez, that's why towns have finance directors. And you as the chief elected board shouldn't have to feel that, requesting my office to do X, Y, or Z is going to undermine this town's ability to do the baseline work. But unfortunately, the staff structure we have, that is the fact, is the same actual personnel who are paying the bills and doing payroll and those absolute baseline things are the very same individuals who are, advancing your policy agenda. So it is competing for the same resources. So, and it's much worse now with COVID. But no, the budget's going to be, but do I prioritize that over preparing the plan that we need to have a written plan to transition toward getting staff back? It's hard to see that that's not a top priority. That is a top priority. I got a dozen top priorities that are legitimately top priorities. We got to refinance the bond by July 17th. I've got a deadline Tuesday we've been working on for weeks, and that's still got some work. So, we're doing the best we can. But the 1/12 budget, I haven't started on it. In my head, I think shouldn't be that big a lift, but I haven't seen the DLS paperwork or what they're gonna require for that. So there is a meeting this Friday that I'll participate in, and hopefully that'll be helpful, and hopefully we can get that done in a matter of a couple of hours, but nothing's ever that simple. Everything's taking longer than it would.
Okay. I would say having that in effect, though, in case that something happens to the June 27th, I think it's worthwhile. Yeah.
We have to do it. No, we have to do it. There's no question.
Okay.
The government says we have to.
The next item is a proposed increase in the FY27 Veteran Services budget. This is new information that we got. Money we do have to expend, so we have to change that line item, and with the reminder that ultimately the state will reimburse us 75% of what we are spending, but it's not something that really we have much choice on.
So I would move to increase it. Whatever whatever it is.
Okay, so we carried in the proposed budget 10,000, which at that point felt like a fairly conservative amount based on historical spending. But as Archie said, we did receive new information last Wednesday. So I'm recommending that we increase the budget amount for the Veteran Services line item from 10,000 to 24,000. That would cover our known obligations for FY21 with roughly a 10% contingency on top of that, or built into that number.
I would agree.
I'll
So
second that. Okay. All in favor, Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Next item is a discussion related to the summer recreation program. So Angus, maybe you can summarize it briefly. You have had some discussion with the Park and Rec Department Commission.
Yes, the issue is with the decision late last week to cancel the summer rec program is typically the program organizers, there's an annual stipend that's paid out in 4 quarterly installments, but traditionally the time hasn't been tracked in terms of hours. It's been more of a fixed fee stipend. And so with the decision to cancel the program and the fact that the program coordinators are paid out of fees that are generated by the summer camp, which is not going to happen, decision needs to be made. Obviously, for the time that's been spent to date, we need to compensate that time, but going forward, because under the Town Manager Act, the Board of Selectmen actually are in charge of compensation. That's why this question is before you as the board rather than a decision I could make.
My feeling would be that absolutely the work that has been done to date has to be compensated. We have to figure out, I guess, with the payroll submission that has been done, in some way we have to verify that. But I would think that with the program being canceled and the fact that some of the money in the revolving account has to be used to restart up the program for next summer, we can't take all the money out of that revolving account. So whatever needs to be expended in terms of the 2 directors for what the work they have done and any work that they might have to do to finish canceling the programs that had been set up, that has to be paid, but that the rest of the amount unfortunately can't can't be paid because the income just isn't there.
And there is, as you know, Archie, there's a one-time revenue source on the books from a grant that was received a number of years ago that would allow for some amount of compensation to take place without, and none of this would affect the taxpayer budget. None of this is taxpayer funded. It's entirely fee funded, or in this case, there is this grant on the books.
So do you, the other grant money that's there, does it seem like in the spirit of the grant that we would be using that money to compensate for, a program that didn't actually happen? Is that in the spirit of the grant? I'm just asking that question.
This past winter, me and my staff we spent many hours trying to get to the bottom of that grant because it goes back more than a decade and there's no paperwork on file. And we made outreach to the grant agency, the Mosley Foundation, to see if they had the original grant paperwork, because we've been looking for any kind of paperwork to specify, allowable uses, protocols for, who's the authority to make those decisions, whether that's the Board of Selectmen, the Park and Rec Commissioners, or otherwise. And we've really come up against a lot of dead ends. So we have very little paperwork on file. All we have been able to find was a IRS filing that the Mosley Foundation made in 2008 that does specify that the funds went to the town of West Newbury, and it does say that it was for a summer rec program. So in the absence of anything more than that, the town accountant has indicated she would see this as an eligible use of those funds. But I think we would all be more comfortable if there was more information on the record, and we'd like to continue to look for that. And I think part of the, it's basically a matter of how much do we need to pay out, how much of that are we comfortable paying from the revolving funds, which is fee supported, and drawing down those balances. And do we even need to bring these grant funds into the discussion? We may not need to, but at the time I wrote the memo last week, I didn't know what the policy direction would be. And if it was to pay the full budgeted amount for the organizers, then yeah, we would need to find that money.
Well,
I do see Stephanie on the call. I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to say anything on this.
Yeah, sure. So Stephanie Frontier, town accountant, business manager. I've done substantial research like Angus stated, and I haven't gotten too far. It's a third-party phone number that I've been trying to call in Boston and leaving messages, but I think I haven't got any response back. However, it is for the summer program, and the work that was done prior to the program being canceled should be paid, I believe, and it could be paid from this Mosley grant. I definitely see it fit based upon what it's been used for in the past.
so, okay, it seems like we're getting in the weeds here. So this is on the agenda for us to discuss it. The program has been canceled. Got that. Two organizers have done work pre-cancellation, and they've submitted time cards, and of course they should be compensated. So I think the question to us is that since it's being canceled, should we then still keep on paying the stipends to the individuals even though the program is canceled? And my answer to that question would be no. So isn't that what? Is that what
That's
we're talking
right.
about
Yeah,
now? Because now I'm getting
you're right,
confused
Glenn.
about think and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the source of the funds is not a question that's before the board. You've put it exactly right. It's whether, at what level to compensate, and then where the money comes from is something I'm working with the Park and Rec chairman on.
So because of that town manager.
Archie had already, suggested, or it sounds like we should certainly pay for what has already been done, for the work that has already been done. And then we should figure out somehow how to prorate to undo what's already been done. Because, you know, there've been obligations made that I think have to be canceled now.
Yes.
So, you know, we have to make some assessment of what the value of that is and compensate.
Or that could have already happened, Rick. We don't even know.
We don't know.
Yeah, it is what it is, but the program has been canceled. We had obligations up until now. We should pay them. And then they should button everything up by canceling the program and be compensated for that. And then we move on to next year. We can't pay stipends out to a program that is not going to happen. And it's the revenue of that is generated, a use base generated by the kids. That's where the money comes from.
Right.
It doesn't come out of the operating budget. That makes it different.
Correct. It comes out of a revolving fund. Okay, so are we all in agreement with that?
Yes.
You have some good understanding of that, Angus?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that, do we need a motion? We don't need to vote on that. Is that correct?
I think I've got a clear sense of the board's direction. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Updates on the Coffin Street 40B proposal. Angus, you want to just mention briefly about what the zoning board has heard from, and you know what their updates and so forth?
Sure. So in terms of the site eligibility process, as I said earlier in the meeting, we've gotten a lot of comments, including I put in front of you the planning board comments that they voted at their meeting last Tuesday, which you can see they've done a really tremendous amount of work on that. So I would certainly like to commend the planning board and staff for their efforts.
I would reiterate that. I told Brian Murphy I thought that the comments were comprehensive, but they were concise at the same time. I thought they were really good.
So we've got other departments and boards and commissions actively reviewing the plan for the project eligibility. We've also got the Board of Appeals had its first meeting last Tuesday for quite some time. And at that time, in addition to getting a training on Chapter 40B from someone with the State Department of Housing and Community Development, they also referred for staff review and recommendation the existing 40B rules and regs. So I'm working with the building inspector and outside counsel, John Witten, to have a draft that will circulate to the Board of Appeals by the end of the week. And they've got a meeting next Tuesday, June 2nd at 4 p.m. To review the draft that we're putting together. And if they see fit to do so at that time, the expectation is they will refer it to public hearing, which would be the following Thursday, June 11th. The time is to be determined. But the goal is to get new 40B regulations locally approved prior to that June 16th deadline. That's not a hard deadline, but that would certainly be ideal. And I think we're on track to do that. But there is, needless to say, there's, some work to be done to get from here to there.
Okay, that's good. So the take-home message is regarding the next item for financing for the Break Hill water tank and the new treatment plant at the well field. That redoing the bans rather than going out for a full-fledged bond issue. Looking at the numbers, we asked what the numbers were last time, and it certainly is a savings to the town at the moment to go ahead and redo the bans rather than separately doing a bond issue.
Yes. Yeah, and Stephanie's been working with Hilltop, since, the correspondence you have goes through last Tuesday. There's been additional, work, in the later part of last week. What we're trying to get a handle on is, back in the old days, where were these bond issuance costs paid from? Because the, water superintendent has said he doesn't recall that they paid those costs in the past. But I'm not aware that the finance department has independently budgeted for these costs either. So it looks like our thinking is that the bond issuance costs historically, meaning, years past, would have been built into the amount that's borrowed and essentially paid over the term of the financing. And with the water project where, so anyhow, we're trying to figure out where that money comes from. So I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to elaborate on that at all, but these are the kinds of things that, ought to be simple, but when you have had the kind of turnover we've had in the finance.
Just in the reserves of my brain, thinking about past finance committee things, it seems to me that they were built into the ultimate cost of the project.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than being paid separately. Yeah. So, Angus, do we have to do anything about this, or just go ahead and?
This had been the strategy I'd recommended at the last meeting, and the board had asked for more information, so that's why it's back before you.
Okay, well, I seeing the dramatic difference in the numbers, I would agree to do that, even though it seems like we're just sort of spinning our wheels, but it's still saving money.
And that's what bans are there for. That's what the bans are there for. Is because if you can aggregate the borrowing, it is going to be better in the long term.
Okay, next item is an extension of the memorandum of understanding with Salisbury for FY21 related to the Harbor Master Services. I read the thing. Everything seems to have been working out well in the past summer, so I see no reason to change anything. I would go for it, but that's the way I look at it.
Yep, I'd make a motion to agree to the memorandum of understanding. Salisbury Harbor Master.
But I do have a question. So there is no change. I mean, I read through it briefly. There is no change at all from other than the dates than the previous agreement, right? Correct?
Correct.
Great.
Further discussion? All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Parker, aye.
Camper, aye.
Next item, I would make a motion to approve the minutes of May 11th as the draft is proposed here.
Second.
All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Camper, aye.
Parker, aye.
Town manager updates. Basically, Angus, you had mentioned these before, but working on with the CBA.
Yep. That was all set.
Next item, we have the town has signed the agreement with MassWorks for work on the Middle Street Bridge. Angus, in reading that, now that we have to prepare a report for June, even though we just started, does it seem like that's the case?
Yes, our quarterly reporting requirements start right away. So we will have a quarterly report due June 30th. I have a call scheduled with the mayor and her chief of staff for later this week. And I've, set out a number of discussion items for that meeting. Basically, as you know, the design work is funded by a small bridge grant that the city of Newburyport received, and the MassWorks grant relies upon that design work continuing and the permitting timelines being met. And so obviously we need to remain in close coordination with the city in order to carry out the timelines in our grant.
That's good. Final comment, placing item on future agendas, follow-up meeting assignments. So I think one of the important things we take away from this is, and Glenn makes a good point that Angus should go back to the, whoever it is at DPW or whatever, and to see if any of the specific warrant articles can be delayed until the fall town meeting. But Glenn's other point is, and what I was concerned with too, is I don't think we want to put too many things off, because we can't count on what the fall is going to be like. I mean, some people are predicting the NFL is going to have 70,000 people in a stadium, and other people are saying there's going to be no one in the stadium. So that's just an example. But I mean, I don't know how we can predict that we can have a normal town meeting in the fall. So I wouldn't necessarily count on that. So maybe we want to get things done now. That's my only comment.
Well, that's what I said also. I mean, we need to streamline and let's not excess, but staying there for another 45 minutes, since we have everybody there, might be more helpful because of the unknown. That was my comment earlier. But we definitely need to go through it and make sure, the things are there, that they're really needed.
I would agree. I think we need to move forward as far as we can. And as far as the fall is concerned, there's no guarantee at all that we'll be able to have a meeting indoors. We might have to consider it an outdoor meeting in the fall, in which case then timing, obviously, I mean, you can't really do it past the end of September. You couldn't do it past the end of September, because now you start to run into temperature issues. So I don't think we want to be kicking cans down the road for a later town meeting.
Angus, with obviously with everything on your plate and the one, it's we don't want to put more on, but how productive if us three and Mike and you, whomever, get together, after you talk to somebody before our next meeting and just kind of go through it really piecemeal. It might be all the same. It might be a little bit different. I mean, how much, or should we, or have you already done that? Excuse me. There's not a lot of fat in our budget anyway, or anything like that.
Oh, I may have misunderstood. Were you talking about the budget or the idea of a streamlined town meeting warrant?
Both. I don't know. I mean,
okay.
I think Casey wants us to try to streamline everything.
Right. Yeah, no, I think the idea of a streamlined warrant, the board did discuss that about a month ago. And, I think that and there were there were a handful of things, probably 6 or 7 or 8 items that were put on the table for potential postponement. Some the board had recommended no action, others you didn't. It's definitely a good idea to take another look at that, and happy to, I know both Mike and I are happy to confer with each of the board members, ideally so we have something on June 8th that everyone's in agreement on, and so that we can get the word out to the voters as well, as far ahead of time as we can. With regard to the budget, as I've said in the last couple of budget presentations last year and this year, short of cutting personnel, there's not really a way to make a big dent in the budget. But I'm not sure if that's what you were saying anyway. I may have misunderstood.
Well, not a big dent in the budget, but I know there's new personnel for certain departments and certain places. Maybe we forego that this year because those type of things we shouldn't be taking on because of the financial. We don't know what's happening, and those things lend to longer discussions than just a regular line item that's gone up 2% or something like that. But the big initiatives of new personnel and those type of things might take a back seat until next year, especially if we don't know what our revenue is going to be and how we're going to be impacted by state aid, by our revenue, local tax receipts.
I think that's a good point, Glenn. Is it not only is it the dollars, but it's those are the things that cause people to spend 20 minutes or half an hour talking about them too.
Correct.
One thing I wonder is, for example, like the way the CPA money is divvied up, and every year we have to have the warrant article and $37,000 going into recreation and $37,000 going into housing support and so forth. And that's like a half page of verbiage. Do we have to read that whole thing in this situation? Is there a way not to read that whole article?
Yes. Excuse me.
I think Casey. He's coughing. I think Casey alluded to that earlier too, of clumping all the ones like that septic revolving one, all the ones that are, the debt service on the Dunn property, all these things that come up every single year, lump them all kind of maybe all together. There's generally not discussion on those.
The reason,
That's exactly
what you
right.
can do,
That's what the consent agenda is. You take articles that every year we do the same article. Nobody ever has any discussion. It passes unanimously year after year after year. And there are numbers of those. And you lump them together and the way that you make a motion. And the motion says, I move to consider articles 4, 5, 9, 10, and 13 as a consent agenda. And if somebody wants to discuss one of those articles, they just say that they object and that article gets removed. But if nobody objects to any of the articles that were lumped together in that one thing, they get moved as a group.
Do you still have to read them though?
Nope.
Okay.
Archie, what we did last year is that you can have the motion read, basically, I move Article 12 as set forth in the town finance book, or, as set forth in the warrant.
In the warrant.
Okay.
Not the
That's
finance.
it. That's the motion. Boom.
Yeah.
And it incorporates everything that's in the article into a motion.
Which means that it can't be amended because you have to move it as written in the warrant.
But
Okay.
for what you said for the thing, it's easy because it's all written out and it's just verbiage.
Yeah.
So you could do the
Okay,
same
well,
with that. That one's easy.
Okay.
So who's going to get together all those articles that has the experience that don't get much discussion, like the septic revolving, all the CPA stuff, all that kind of stuff is what it is. There is no debate.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it because I'm there every year while we do it. And I would appreciate it if all of you would take a look at it too. And then
Okay.
I'll flag the ones that I think, we never do anything with them. We just vote and it's unanimous. Vote unanimous. And people still have the right to say they don't want that article to be on the consent agenda. So it comes off and then we discuss it.
Some of them are a little bit more confusing. I mean, like the septic one, I mean, it can be dealt with quickly with a quick motion. But remember is that, we have to specify a funding source for a lot of these articles. And
We talked
so
about that
you're gonna need a
last time, too.
motion for that.
And if we make one motion and the source of funding for everything in that motion is free cash, then you just say in the motion, I move that we accept articles, blah, 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 as written in the warrant with the source of funding being free cash.
You can do that.
Okay.
I have a suggestion too. You know how we have different, like if it's a Board of Health thing or if it's a water thing, why can't we have all the motions centralized with the Board of Selectmen? Not because we want to do it and we're trying to take it away from them, just because it will be a lot easier. People walking around, all the motions, that we can streamline them. They all can be done and we can have them all up front rather than having people come up and all that kind of stuff.
And further than that, Glenn, I'd suggest that you have one member of the selectmen make the motions as opposed to passing a microphone around, and one member of the finance committee giving the recommendations.
I think those are great ideas. Those are all great ideas. That'll really streamline things. And yeah, that'll really streamline. Yeah.
I still don't understand the septic loan thing after 20 years, but someday I will.
It was Title V. It was Title V. Everybody had the Title V and the state made money
No. I just can't.
available.
The money goes in and it goes out, and I can't figure it out.
So Archie, it basically is don't lose your on this.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's good. Let's all go home. Oh, we are home.
Chairman, may I ask one follow-up to the petition and the transfer of the funds? One of the things that I want to at least get out there right now, and we can discuss it as you would advise, how we determine oversight of that new fund. Let's say it was called legal and professional services, because it would seem that oversight, at least from my opinion, would be the Board of Selectmen. Want to just check in with you all on that. And if anything,
Well, that's a
if I
good
have to
question
do it-
because
Go ahead, Glenn.
Mike, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
it's the petition.
With
Can I
regard,
Can I ask another question though?
remember, the motion
So
is going to govern, not necessarily the article. So you would recommend a motion that would say that it would be, as, directed by the Board of Selectmen, partly because with regard to legal services, the Board of Selectmen have this, they have the exclusive control of the town's provision of legal services and obtaining counsel. So you might as well keep it all centralized with the Board of Selectmen. And we can certainly craft a motion that reflects that.
So nothing, Mike, nothing that I would need to do on my end.
No.
Great, thank you.
I'll work with you
I
on it and show you.
Okay.
I have a question. that might help facilitate this on town meeting floor, or people have questions. So this citizens petition, it goes forward, and then X amount of monies is going to be, held by the Board of Selectmen at their discretion. Now, the people they're not going to decide if they want a traffic study. They're not going to decide. So I want to make sure that's clear up ahead of time, because that's going to be a huge discussion. Just because you brought this petition forward, it doesn't mean that the people on this petition, or there's going to be a committee or whatever that's going to start saying, well, we want this, we want this, we want this, but it's going to be, paid by the Board of Selectmen. So that needs to, this is just going to be an article with some money in it that's going to be used in the discretion of the selectmen to try to get more information and to try to have a better understanding of a 40B that's coming into town, I guess would be a quick way of saying it, correct?
That's, the town meeting appropriates the money. That's all it does.
And that's the way, Glenn, we understood it and intended it, because 53G addresses a number of funding mechanisms for peer reviewed. These are things that often may come up, including legal counsel, that are beyond peer review, which would have to be paid for by the developer.
Correct. I agree. I just wanted to make sure that that was out there.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Make a motion to adjourn? Make a motion to adjourn?
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Camper, aye.
Can't hear Rick. I think
Well,
he said aye.
it anyway.
All right.
Is
I
it-
just
Good night,
realized I
everybody.
had my microphone off when I wasn't talking. Sorry. I couldn't figure out why nobody could hear me. Oh, well.
Good meeting, everybody. Thank you.
Glenn, hang in there.
I'm here. Bye.
Keep getting better.
Thanks.